morning, everyone.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone.
Welcome to my Pollen Talk.
What is gender blindness? Gender blindness is the ignorance to realize that the roles and responsibilities we assume with women or men aren't really arising from them naturally, but are put on them through social, cultural, or economic structures. So what does this has to do with the environment? Well, we can look at the connection of gender and the environment through different aspects, starting with the causes of environmental issues. For example, in average, men contribute to CO2 emissions far more than women due to their economic wealth and their mobility choices and the dietary choices they have. And furthermore, we have the effects of environmental issues. So also women are disproportionately more affected by environmental issues. For example, the chemicals we find in cosmetics, or as well climate change effects like flooding or heat waves within cities. But there we have a huge lack of data, which should be improved as well. And then we find within the responses to environmental issues that women can actually be the catalysts of behavior change. So we see that, for example, in farming, they promote a very sustainable movement, and also within climate movements, we see in the Fridays for Future movements that actually women are the leaders for change. And then within the representation in the field of policy making or research, we find actually also that men are there presented more than women. For example, within the EU, environmental ministers are still 70% of them are men. So these all presents imbalances within the different aspects, and if we don't take this into consideration, we will find a reproduction or even widening of gender-based inequalities. What we can find on the EU level, there are different policies. First of all, we find the EU Gender Equality Strategy, which includes a dual approach. So it has targeted measures looking at the most important issues, for example, the equal pay or the women economic empowerment, but also we have this gender mainstreaming, which is supposed to make sure that this gender perspective is included in all EU policies. And then, ironically, a few months before the Gender Equality Strategy was introduced, the European Green Deal was introduced. And there we find, in general, a lack of terms like gender, women, or man. And if we look at specific instruments like the Just Transition mechanism, we see that it doesn't really address any of these gender inequalities, but it doesn't really promote any further looking into which social groups should be addressed to have this equal transition. And also, when we look at the EU climate law or the EU climate adaptation strategy, we see that they mention gender, and they also mention that women are impacted more than men when we look at climate change issues, but it doesn't really include this perspective within the actions they propose. So that is why we need a transition that includes everyone and doesn't leave anyone behind. So I propose the EU Green Deal Gender Action Plan, which is supposed to build synergies between these two strategies. And it should include some capacity building and integrate the gender equality into the objectives of environmental policies. It needs to include gender impact assessments to look at how can these EU policies really address gender inequalities. It should intensify research and data so that we can really have the basis for good EU policies, and we need a gender budget to finance this all, broader participation, and create a task force on equality and the environment, which doesn't only include commission members but also social movements. So let's start a greener and more gender equal transition